Y'all know. It's on now.
Okay.
They won't shut the schools down.
That's fine.
I will shut it down for 3 days. I don't know what that would do. Keep the teachers in. Shut schools down for several days. Does a lot of things. I've seen somebody on Facebook, a couple of parents saying it's time to shut it down.
Yes.
The teachers reach out to me for the first time. And so many with 14 students, they're their own kids. They don't have COVID. They're using their own time. And then you can't have stuff.
Three.
All of the.
Oh, good.
You need anything?
Nope, I think we're good.
Most of the fourth graders, teachers have either kids that are quarantined or are quarantined. Shannon's entire class. Millie's, my niece's class is quarantined through Wednesday. Maybe all of sixth grade. Try to pull, I looked at the dashboard quickly, we either need to do that or get rid of the quarantine guys. I do not like to have children sitting at home. We're putting us on them and make sure.
Or right in the center there. We'll turn it on, it'll turn red when you're ready to talk.
How willy-nilly.
Oh, yeah.
Not because I'm in trouble.
No, she hadn't put the name tags out yet when I got. All this different.
I think the show people that were having, we need to go back to students.
I've been saying that.
Oh, there's so much more people there.
Remember to press the button on the middle. And again, you don't have to, phone's got to be close to it. But do make sure you speak in the mic so I can get you on the digital recording, but you press the button to call, button right there. Turn red. Turn it back off.
Okay. That makes sense.
We've addressed that. You'll take it a minute.
Good time. I know.
Okay, at this time, I will call the January 10th, 2022 meeting to order. At this time, if you all will, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States. Republic. Which is one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the minutes from the December 13th, 2021 meeting. And if so, at this point, I would entertain a motion for their approval.
I make a motion to approve the December 13th meeting minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, at this time, as you know, in our December meeting, we accepted the resignation of Ms. Sarah Bell, and that has created a vacancy for our Saluda Township seat on our board. As is protocol, it is our responsibility as a board to appoint someone to fill that seat until the next general election. After conversations with each of you individually this past week, it is my understanding that we have someone that we would like to nominate for that seat. And at this point in time, I would entertain a motion for that nomination. I have a motion to approve Mr. Rob Parsons as filling the Saluda seat for this interim. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carry 6-0. At this time, Mr. Parsons, we would like to welcome you to the Polk County Board of Education. If you would, sir, please come to the stage. We have a seat waiting for you. I also understand that Ms. Pam Hyder, our Polk County Clerk of Court, is here to swear you in. Ms. Hyder, if you would, please come forward.
Sonia, you hold that microphone.
Will support and maintain the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the Constitution of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of your office as Polk County School Board member. So help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Ms. Hyder, thank you for being here. And again, welcome, Mr. Parsons, to the board. At this point in time, I will turn things back over to Superintendent Green for, I believe, some commentary about this motley crew of misfits.
Definitely wouldn't characterize you guys that way, but as the board is aware, you longtime members are, January is Board Appreciation Month for boards of education, and we certainly do appreciate our Board of Education. So I would like to read a statement that we will put into the record and also publish our thoughts and sentiments towards our board members here in Polk County. Thank you, Polk County Board of Education. School board members exemplify community representation in education. They're dedicated to their service and put forth significant effort to ensure that our schools are providing the best education possible for the children of our community. That's why we're taking this opportunity to recognize them during School Board Appreciation Month in January. School board members are citizens whose decisions affect our children, what they learn, who will teach them, and what kinds of facilities house their classrooms. With the advice and counsel of the educational professionals they hire and govern, our board members have an impact on virtually every aspect of our schools. This is a huge responsibility and one that should not be taken lightly. They represent our community and they take this responsibility very seriously. Recently, Board of Education members across the state and country have been at the center of heated social and political debates, and many have endured unfair criticism as they've been forced to make very difficult decisions at a time when there are no good options. These individuals now serve in a context where past precedent and conventional wisdom do not exist or apply, and as varied and changing mandates, rules, and procedures are handed down. Most importantly, they put the education of students first, before personal agendas, politics, or any preconceived notions about difficult issues. Too often we neglect to recognize the dedication and hard work of these men and women who represent us. They deserve this recognition, especially during these trying times. The staff and students of our school district wish to express sincere appreciation for the leadership and support provided by each member of the Polk County Board of Education. We hope others will join us as we salute the Polk County Board of Education, whose dedication and leadership help make our schools some of the highest performing in the state. We applaud you for your vision and voice to help shape a better tomorrow for our students and our community. Board members, thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We appreciate the comments. Moving on, the next item on our agenda is under instructional and ESSER purchase order approvals. Mr. Sherping.
That'll be mine. You have a financial policy that says the school board must approve any purchase orders over $50,000. So we have two purchase orders that are pending out there for your approval. Both of them are using what we call COVID funds or ESSER funds, the elementary and secondary school relief money. The first one is for the purchase of outdoor classroom furniture. If you look at that purchase order, it is for about $80,000. It is outdoor picnic tables for each of our schools, a couple of trash cans, a few other things along that line. But about $80,000 worth of outdoor furniture for all 7 of our schools. The second purchase order is for improved instructional technology in our classrooms. As you look at that purchase order, it is for Promethean displays, 36 of which are 75-inch displays that will be used in our remaining elementary classrooms that don't already have displays. So we, for the most part, have worked our way from the bottom up. We did preschool, kindergarten, first grade. We started working our way up. This will do the remainder of our elementary school classrooms. And then the 26 after that are for the 86-inch displays. Our middle school classrooms are larger, so this does all of our regular instructional classrooms in the middle school. That one's about $200,000 there. 2 purchase orders over $50,000 that require your approval.
Any questions for Mr. Sherping?
I move that the 2 purchase orders be approved.
Okay, I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Will they have tops over these seatings outside, or will it just be open?
This is just for the tables right now. Various schools are doing a variety of different things about different shelters. Polk Central is working on an outdoor classroom space for kind of that area between their 2 buildings, their largest building between the gym and the elementary building there. Salute is doing umbrellas that cover their areas that are there. The middle school is gonna be using theirs in the back of the school, kind of where they already have those wooden tables that have been there almost 15 years now and are wearing out. The high school is gonna replace at the front of their school, as you walked in here, if you came in the front of the building, those wooden tables that are outside that, they're gonna replace that. That's in a very shaded, tree-lined area. Sunny Views, I gotta find, I believe they're doing a covered area with theirs also, not as part of this funding. And then Try-Ons is gonna be in a couple of places, some of which is shaded.
Any other questions for Mr. Sherpin? Okay, I have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Moving along now, we move under administrative. The first item here is a budget amendment with Ms. Debbie Lovelace.
Okay, in your board packets, our first budget amendment this year is in state funds. Allotment revision 25 through 28. We received revenues for behavior support. We also had a NCBPS reduction and a LEA first month reduction. That's normally the first of the year. They're kind of behind this year. Usually that we would have already had these, but DPI is really behind because of all the budget delays. We also did fund okay, there goes. Fund 8. That was also additional revenues. That was for DHHS testing COVID grant that we received. And also we received some Forbes Foundation grant money for a total of $172,788. That's all I have.
Any questions for Ms. Lovelace?
Is the COVID grant money just used for testing, or is it for PPH, the masks, et cetera, or what exactly is that?
Okay, most of that was a grant that we wrote, which we got another nurse, which we didn't have enough nurses anyhow. So, and it's for the testing, COVID testing, to help with that at the schools with the students and staff.
Any other questions for Ms. Lovelace? All right, this is an actionable item. I'll be looking for a motion and a second for approval.
I move the budget amendments be approved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lovelace. And then right back to you again. I think, Ms. Lovelace, we have the 2022-2023 budget calendar.
Ms. Lovelace, I can do that if you don't want to walk back up the steps. Mr. Chair, we schedule a budget calendar each year to begin conversations with schools and departments about the upcoming fiscal year for us that ends in June and starts in July. And so this springtime is our usual time frame for working with departments and schools to get their budgets together. And so we always bring a calendar to you to approve for that process. So our administrative group would be looking for approval to have this budget calendar in place for this year.
All right, any questions for Mr. Green on that? Again, this is an actionable item. We'll be looking for a motion and a second for approval. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have a discretionary admission application for action again, Mr. Sherping. I believe we're going to defer this until closed session, correct, Mr. Green?
Yeah, Mr. Ashworth, if you don't mind, we'd like to move this to closed session. I think there were some questions from board members and then there's some administrative information we'd like to give y'all as well. So I think this one's better suited to go to closed session.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, we'll table it till then.
Any opposition? Okay, we'll move that to closed session. Next under administrative is the Polk County High School HVAC project update. Information only, Mr. Dave Sherping.
All right, we were making great progress on this project. Then unfortunately, our construction groups run into a little bit of a COVID issue. So like everybody else around the country, they've run into the same issue. So we had 4 good weeks scheduled for what we call phase 4 of this project. They're working right now downstairs in these 5 classrooms at the very back end of the building. They were looking for a great 2 weeks when there were no kids in the school. They got about 3 days of those 10 days that they could have worked during that time. But they had made pretty good progress when they were coming back for us when they came back after Christmas. And then last Thursday, they had a group of their employees that were working here in the evenings test positive. So they've been out the end of last week. They're going to be out at least the beginning half of this week and then not return until the very end of this week. So it's putting our phase 4 a little bit behind where we expected to be. We had hoped to have phase 4, these rooms 105 to 115 right there, finished by the end of this week. This is our exam week, remember, at the high school. And so we believe in them working at the end of this week, they can still possibly get it done to get this phase finished at the very beginning of next week, when Monday and Tuesday, our staff here have work days as they work for that semester transition. So where they'd hoped to be finished Thursday of this week, hopefully they get back, work Friday, part of the weekend, and then Monday, Tuesday, and we'll be moving from phase 4 into phase 5, this green section on the drawing you see right there. So far, what they have worked on is phases 2 and 3, the upstairs parts of the building. Phase 1 was all the work that was done during the summertime and all the pipe lay and the equipment and all that put in. Phase 2 is what we did first. Phase 3 was the second one, took about a month for each of those. We're just about finished with phase 4. Hopefully we'll get out of that one. We'll move to phase 5. We've actually taken this 103 classroom out of that phase. It's going to work better as we move to the section that's 128 and 130 of those sections there. So we'll do phase 5. If all continues as we're hoping, that will take us to about the beginning of February, middle of February. Then we move back upstairs for phase 6. And that is this whole long hallway that we call our CTE or our math or our shops. These are our 3 shops, CTE shops that are there. So that's phase 6. We will then move on to phase 7, the small section of the downstairs part of the building, kind of just past the offices. Along with that are a couple of there's another section right here for the teacher workroom that'll have to be part of this phase. And then as the school year finishes up, we will be moving into phase 8. And that's the new wing for the building. That'll be phase 8. They'll be finished with all the parts that we had hoped to get done during the school year. And then they'll start really from this section here near the media center and then work on this part of the building after that throughout the summer. So although we've had a couple of delays with COVID delays and the Brady employees, we're hoping to get kind of back on track, and we should still be ready to start the big half of this project for the summertime, and again, still be finishing up in that September timeframe.
Any questions for Mr. Sherping? Thank you, Mr. Sherping. Moving along, the next item on our agenda is employee compensation changes. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you guys know, we were fortunate enough to recently have an adopted budget. That's the first time in a while we've had one of those. But as the old saying goes, the devil's in the details. And I can assure you that there are a lot of details that we're still working to figure out along with the Department of Public Instruction and their financial services department. So what Ms. Lovelace and I tried to do was to summarize what we felt very confident about in terms of what we know right now with some employee compensation changes going on. I know you guys have probably heard us talk about bonuses, retention. Other districts are using ESSER funds to do those kinds of things. So we just wanted to summarize for you what some of the changes will be going forward with the budget. And then also we're going to need approval to take some action, and I'll get to that in just a little bit once we cover the changes. So we've been working hard to figure out employee compensation changes and all the bonus language that's in the newly adopted budget. This is complex and pretty difficult to digest. We're also trying to figure out exactly which employees certain bonuses or certain pay raises apply to and which ones don't. In many cases, these raises and bonuses were going to cover only state employees, which means that the board will have to approve these changes also for our non-state paid employees, your locally paid and your federally paid employees. And so we'll have to authorize administration to use ESSER funds, or even in some situations, local allotments, to make sure that all of our employees receive a similar compensation. I'm operating from the assumption that this board wants us to treat all of our employees equally, and that if a state paid person gets a bonus or a raise, then a locally paid or a federally paid person ought to get that same bonus or raise, unless there are specific rules around that. We're also going to ask you guys in this motion that we want the board to allow us to make changes to our ESSER planning allotment to set aside monies for what would be a one-time retention bonus for all employees. You're hearing about other districts doing that. If we have that ESSER money available, I feel like our staff has certainly earned those retention bonuses, and we can talk more details about that. We're just asking for the approval to redo our budget, our planning allotment with ESSER funds, and then come back to you with a specific amount on that retention bonus and specific language about what that means in February. So approving this flexibility would only be approving us to modify the budget to make sure we can secure the funds to do a retention bonus. And then we want to come back and also look at bus driver pay. That's something that's been hitting us pretty hard. So I'll just say that to you right now, in that the quote unquote minimum wage for school employees is going to be going up to $13. But we are seeing such a bus shortage, and other districts are raising the pay for bus drivers. We feel like that's an employee group we need to target pretty soon. So we'll be coming back to you with a discussion in February about bus driver pay as well. We'll certainly update you on any new information out there that comes along that may change some of the things that are in this chart that I've handed out to you, or that cause us to take a different direction with payroll. But let me run down these changes very quickly for you, and so you'll know what's going on. So first of all, there is a service bonus that's being given to all employees in the state budget. For those making less than $75,000, that'll be a $1,500 bonus. And I didn't put the equal to, but if you're greater than or equal to $75,000, then you'll just get 1,000. And that's also prorated on hours. So if you're only working, 80% of the time, then you'll get 80% of whatever share of that money that you want. So that's prorated. There's also an instructional performance. They call it a bonus. If you recall, we had a situation whereby the state decided to defer any performance bonuses because we didn't have the results. They didn't feel like it was a good year to try to measure teachers or kids in that regard. And so in lieu of those performance bonuses that teachers usually have access to, they are giving a one-time $300, what they call instructional performance bonus. Now that goes to school-based instructional staff only that are licensed. So I need to make that clear. That's a teacher bonus only. And that will also be one of those situations where if we have a locally paid teacher, that we're going to want the board to let us go ahead and give those individuals that same bonus. There is a COVID training bonus included in the budget, and that is all of our instructional staff who are licensed, and that deals with some of the training that we provided, not only on procedures for safety, but also instructional issues, retention, making sure that we address MTSS and those things. And so, again, that's $1,000 for those licensed instructional staff. That's across the district level, and that will require us to probably use some ESSER funding and maybe even a little local to get that one out to every employee who, quote unquote, qualifies for it. As I said before, there's a non-certified raise in the budget that moves all of our employees up to a minimum of $13 an hour, or will provide those non-certified staff with a 2.5% raise, whichever is larger. So if you have an employee making, $10 an hour and that 2.5% wouldn't get them to 13, then they're going to go all up to 13. But if you have somebody who is making $13.10 an hour, that's not very much of a good thing unless you give them a raise too. So that individual would get a 2.5% raise. I hope that makes sense to you. But that's for non-certified staff. They either get a $13 an hour minimum or 2.5% raise, whichever is the greater of the two in that situation. That that will also require us to have state and federal and local funds applied to state funds to make that happen. Certified raises are the step increases And that's for your licensed individuals. That is going to occur on the state scale that they've adopted. When you look at that state scale, it's usually about a 1.3% increase for those teachers. Some bands are bigger than others, but that's the average increase is 1.3%. And that fall pay will be back paid, whatever their increase was supposed to be this student academic year. They'll get that back paid to the fall, but that will come in a lump sum in February. They still don't have the regulations done on the DPI side. So let's say that a teacher would have earned $400 more in the fall with that particular step increase. Then that $400 will be given to them in a lump sum in February. So I want to make that clear. Again, for those locally paid and federally paid teachers, we're going to have to take a look at that. We keep them commensurate on all those state salary scales. Everybody's equal. So that will require more local funds and federal funds as well. Just like the teacher performance bonus went away in the last couple of years, so did the principal bonuses. And so the state put in $1,800 for each principal in lieu of those performance bonuses for principals. And almost all of our administrators are paid out of state. We do have a locally paid administrative position, so that will require us to use funds out of local to give that bonus as well. I talked to you a little bit about bus drivers and us looking at their pay. We do want to make sure we bring back to you in February an increase looking at them. And then the same thing with the retention bonus. We would just like the permission on those two items to look at ESSER funds to see if we could use that money versus our local money to provide that compensation. So, Mr. Chair, I know that's all complicated. A board member was telling me when they looked at this that this was kind of hard to understand, and I told her to sit down with Debbie for a few hours and figure that it is crazy trying to get through all the wording and all the documentation. NCDPI has another webinar tomorrow, so we may learn a lot more about even more of this detail tomorrow, but this is what we know now, and what we need to do is for you guys to approve these increases, not for state employees, because they come for state employees naturally, but for us to go ahead with federal, local money, ESSER money, to make sure that all of our employees receive whatever bonus or increase they're supposed to receive, as well as going back and amending our planning budget for ESSER to include a local retention bonus that would go to all employees. So, Mr. Chair, that would be the motion.
That was a mouthful. With that said, are there any questions for Mr. Green before we accept a motion on that behalf?
So we're making a motion to approve the increase and not for the budget to be looked at, just switch around funds to get the money.
What I'm asking for is to allow us to amend our budgets, both the ones we have in place now with local funds and federal funds, so that those locally paid and federally paid people receive a bonus or a raise that's commensurate with their peers in the same position, and to allow us to amend the ESSER budget to provide money for a retention bonus for all employees. So we'd actually be approving the paying of these increases for our locally and federally paid people all the way down to the retention bonus. And then under retention bonus, I'm simply asking you to give us the flexibility to resubmit an amendment to the ESSER plan to use that money instead of our local funds to provide a retention bonus to employees. It's probably clear as mud.
And also to bring back something about the bus drivers as well.
Yes, to bring back some bus drivers.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
So I guess a simple way to say it would be that if you're going to give the administration approval, we want to make sure that all locally, federally, state paid employees receive the same increases in compensation and bonuses so that nobody's treated differently. It will require federal and local fund expenditures to do that. And we also would want flexibility in our planning allotment budget for ESSER to see about a retention bonus for all employees. Is that simpler? I'm making it worse.
No. Any other questions for Mr. Green? We're looking for a motion and a second for approval.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. And now back to Mr. Green again for our school update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go down our monthly item of looking at where we are in our schools and to revisit our COVID policy. The review of prior context you guys have already seen. I'm going to skip right on over that slide. That's been in our presentation each time. The current situation we're under right now, we do have a temporary mask requirement still in place, and we are seeing significant community and regional spread. We're up to 20% positivity and 724 cases per 100,000 as of today. That's off the CDC site. The cases and impacts have been significant since we returned from the holidays. We saw it increase each day. I think we had 20 cases last Wednesday. We've had 36 in the prior week, and then today alone we had 28 cases that we dealt with today that required investigation and follow-up. So it is definitely spreading around our community. It's causing a lot of impacts in terms of staffing. You couple that with the sickness, the illness that we're seeing that's not COVID. So we're also seeing flu, stomach viruses, strep throat, sinus infections, these other things to keep our staff out as well. And so it was a real challenge for us to try to keep our staff in school and to find substitutes. We're already short-staffed in a lot of areas. And so once you knock down 2, 3, 4 people out of a place, it's very hard to keep going. As I said, those combined illnesses with COVID caused us to briefly close Tryon Elementary last week for a day due to staffing issues. We were able to rally some folks the next day and get them back in. We almost had to look at Polk Central today. Over the weekend, we had enough cases come in where we looked at Polk Central as possibly closing, but they were able to find some folks to cover. And the high school was hit very hard today with a lot of cases. And so as staff members go out on quarantine, it is very difficult to keep our operations going. Polk County itself set a record for cases last week, and this particular variant appears to spread very quickly is very indiscriminate, goes around. We're working as hard as we can to keep students and staff in school. On the next slide, you'll see that CDC and DHHS have changed their quarantine rules. We put that information out to families so they would be aware. I think there's good news and bad news. The bad news, I guess, is that those obligations are still in place and we're still having to contact, trace, and do those things. The good news is that quarantine length has been dropped to 5 days as long as folks are asymptomatic. And so we're pleased that kids are in more than not. Obviously, the face coverings make a big difference there. If we had to do 6 feet, 15 minutes, we would have quarantined a substantially larger number of students over the past few days. So the face coverings are limiting quarantines. It doesn't make them go away. Again, we're seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 people per incident, depending on what happens and what the location is. But these quarantine improvements, the flexibility, and hopefully we're headed in the right direction. We're still not there yet, but these are hard enough to implement with face coverings required. And so if you didn't have them in place right now, we would be sending lots and lots of people home, and we'd have a very difficult time trying to investigate these situations with the health department. We are reviewing a test to stay program to see if it could benefit our schools. I know one of the frustrating things for parents is that kids who are not ill often get caught up in a lunchtime quarantine, or maybe they're on an athletic team and get caught up on that. It sure would be nice to be able to give those students a rapid test that if it were negative, their vaccine status wouldn't matter, then they could possibly stay. So we're looking at that particular program as a way to keep kids in school who are not sick or not ill or not exhibiting symptoms. That test to stay program does have a caveat that face coverings have to be in place to do that. We're still going to research, see what the details are, and bring that back to you to hopefully keep even more kids in school for longer. I know that's very frustrating for parents. It's an economic issue for parents, and it certainly is an issue when it comes to their learning and well-being. So we're trying to do our best to keep as many in school as we can. Vaccination numbers are still low for minors, and we have heard that the current surge that we're going through right now, that I don't think anybody anticipated coming this quickly, is predicted to peak in late January, and hopefully we'll see some relief by the first or second week of February. This particular variant appears, if the curves are going to follow here as they have in other places, it's not as bell curve, it's more of an A. It goes up quickly and then comes down quickly. And I'm very hopeful for that, and I know you guys are hopeful for that as well. On the next slide, you'll see masking policies. I can tell you that Henderson County just switched back tonight because of the number of impacts they've had with quarantines and other issues. So they did go back to a mask requirement tonight. And some of the other districts that I've talked to that were optional are meeting and reconsidering their stance due to the guidelines. And this particular variant is spreading like wildfire across the state. As far as what we're going to do going forward, I think it's important for us to continue and handle and triage as we can to try to keep people in school. I do want to make sure the board is aware that as we have staffing issues, or if this thing gets really out of hand in terms of sickness, that temporary closures of classrooms or even schools at times may result in the coming weeks. Again, we'll do the best we can to not do that. Our goal is to keep kids in school. We want to monitor this current surge and outbreak for a peak in a recession. And then hopefully we're going to see some continued changes in DHHS guidelines. We're continuing to work on our side to get those done. The quarantine procedures at some point become very cumbersome, and we'd like to see a lot of that relaxed or at least get some more flexibility. I'm going to say this to you as someone who has tried to toe the line as a bureaucrat over the years, but at some point we're going to have to move forward. We simply cannot continue having our staff, our parents, our families, everybody under the sun running around doing the things we're doing. It is apparent, I think, in the community that people are going to only go so far with mitigation efforts. If that's the case, then what are we really doing? But it has become a divisive issue, and it's one that I feel like in our current form is unsustainable over time. So at some point, whether it's after this surge or some way we can arrive at a test to stay or something like that, we have to move forward, and we have to keep kids in school, send sick kids home and leave well kids in school. And I hope we can get there. But at some point, I want you to understand, you know, the board I know wants to get there. We want to get there, and hopefully that day's coming sooner than later. We've discussed a metric before. We've had a percent positivity metric for a long time now, not a long time, but a couple months now. And I would simply suggest to you that if we're going to use a metric, we would suggest going to the CDC's community transmission status. That incorporates two different measures, the cases per 100,000 and a percent positive. It's updated more quickly and timely. And so a suggestion I might have for the board is if you wanted to use a metric to say when we will go optional, when Polk County has been out of the high transmission range for 7 days consecutively, might be a way you could say that. It's just a suggestion. You guys as a board can do whatever you want. But I think that CDC community transmission status or statistic is a better metric than just percent positive. You can see what that means on this slide. We shared this with you last time, but that means anything other than high. If you were in substantial, moderate, or low, you could go optional with your face coverings and move forward there. But when we're in the high range, that is very, very cumbersome to try to deal with the investigations and the quarantine. As far as the recommendation from administration, I think we have to consider that this current surge is having a huge impact on staffing. We're seeing a lot of folks get sick, get ill. And we also need to consider that people have had vaccine access for those 5 and older. That means they've had time to have their second shot and ready to go. The isolation and quarantine guidelines are reduced, but they're still in place, still things that we have to deal with. And we are seeing that predicted spike after the break, along with this variant surge, and we hope it goes away quickly. So our administrative recommendation would be continued temporary mask requirement until we can revisit at our next meeting, or go by that metric of high transmission. And if it goes out of the high range 7 consecutive days, then we go to masks optional. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions right now. And obviously you guys have to take action on this item.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, would we have any questions for Mr. Green before, as you know, as he just pointed out, this is something we have to take action on each meeting. I know it's something that has caused us a lot of heartache and angst over time, but it's something we are forced to vote on each month. So at this point in time, any questions for Mr. Green before we would entertain a motion? Okay, with that being said, then we'd be looking for a motion to act on the mask for this month.
I would make a motion that we make mask optional as of February 1st, unless the CDC metric for 7 days consecutive appears before that date, that we make the mask optional as of February 1st. That will gets us through the Christmas break, the surge that we're having now. It has the 5-day, we're reduced down to 5-day quarantine. We've had people who have the options to be vaccinated now and get their boosters. And by that time, everybody who wants to be vaccinated can be vaccinated. Ones that don't want to be vaccinated don't have to be vaccinated. And that gives an option for the mask to come off as of February 1st.
Okay, I have a motion on the table from Ms. Jackson for that. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
I have a second from Ms. Gibbs. Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this subject?
I will make a motion. Well, I guess I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have to act on this motion first. The discussion points at this point. So for discussion topics, I am readily here to admit that I was ready last meeting to try to set a date. And had we done that, at this point in time, we would be backpedaling on that. So I am hesitant to set a date, though I would love nothing more than to do that. But I am in favor of that metric of saying 7 days, below that high transmission guideline, then we can move to mask optional. If that happens between now and the next meeting, so be it. But my personal opinion is the date is something we can't work with right now, but the metric certainly is. That's my opinion. Any other discussion? Okay, I'd be looking for a vote. All those in favor of Ms. Jackson's motion and Ms. Gibbs' second, please say aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Motion fails 2-5. I would then be looking for another motion.
I'd like to make a motion, we use CDC, once we get below high, take the mask out
And for 7 days.
for 7 days.
The motion for Mr. Koval is if we fall below the high transmission category within our county by CDC guidelines for 7 days, then we can take the mask off. I have that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-1. Thank you, everybody. I know this has been a tough subject for us. I appreciate the patience on everybody's part. Moving on now to old business. Mr. Green, any old business?
No, sir.
How about new business? All right.
Mr. Green, we do have two
Oh, we
calendars.
do have got some calendar items here.
I do have two calendars to bring to you under the new business.
I'm sorry, I had an old agenda, Mr. Chair. Dave Sherping has two calendars under new business he'd like to bring you.
These are the two changes we've had recently. The first one is Saluta's calendar. The snow they had on January 3rd, but they got an extra day added on to their Christmas break. So they were out on January 3rd. And then the second one is the calendar for Trine Elementary, where they were out as a work day on last Friday, January 7th. For both of those calendars, we have yet to put any makeup days for those in there. So Trine Elementary lost the very first day of the school year and January 7th, so they're now at 178 student days. Saluta's only lost that one day for snow, so they're at 179. We're gonna bring to you probably in February. We'll see how the weather goes, February, March, if we can use those days in March 11th and March 14th as makeup days. We'll go ahead with that, but we didn't want to make too much of a commitment now with winter just right in front of us right now. So the two calendars just record the days they've been out and decrease the number of instructional days for those students.
That is not an action item then, is that correct, Dave?
The changes to our calendar, you can, they should be approved. This is the new calendar we're operating under.
Okay. All right, then we will be looking for a motion and a second for approval of the new calendars.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, now moving on down under information. In your packs, we have our December preschool monthly report, pre-K financial report, monthly financial report, month-to-date credit report, credit card report. On January 17th and 18th, we have an optional teacher work day and required teacher work day. We have board training, board officers academy virtual event on February the 18th from 10 to 3. The spring law conference, another virtual event on March the 3rd from 10 a.m. to March the 4th at 1 p.m. At this point in time, we'll be moving towards our public input. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I only have, I believe, 4 people slated to speak this evening, so there'll be no reason to amend our policy. As a reminder, everyone, we have 3 minutes, 3 minutes each, and the first person up would be Mr. Greg Minor.
And I've not been very politically active or interested until maybe the last year. And with all the stress with the virus and politics in general, I couldn't help but notice how even in our local communities, it seems like board members like you have been under a lot of fire. I've seen some of the videos that you guys have had to put up with. And I think it's important that you be commended for the service you do. We do need people that can take on the responsibility of our children or any other board member in this community. And I just want to acknowledge and commend you all for your service, no matter which way you fall on the political landscape. So thank you for that. And that's all I really came to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. Next up is Mr. Jeff Weaver.
Yeah, Jeff Weaver. I had no intention on speaking tonight until I got a call right before I left saying my son was quarantined again. And I'm, you know, it is a divisive thing. And you're right, Mr. Green, the people of this county are done with it. I'm done with it, been done with it. I've already been lied to about the mask. We weren't going to wear them, then we put them back on. We're still on. It's ridiculous. The CDC, you know, like to go with the CDC, what CDC said. CDC said last week that the cloth mask does not work. But that's fine. You know, we still have to parade around like we're in China with them on. My son, like I said, I got the call. So it also says that if he is quarantined, I mean, if he's been vaccinated, I can call somebody and he can come back tomorrow if he doesn't have any symptoms. He's never had a symptom. So there's a vaccine that does not work, been proven not to work, period. But as long as he's taking that, he can come back. I just don't. When are y'all gonna start using your heads and quit punishing these kids? The only two people up there that haven't is Danielle and Miss Jackson, and I commend y'all to for that. The rest of y'all need to be removed, and I hope you are just as soon as we can vote. This has got ridiculous. And tomorrow, I'm going to, you know, we have a COVID protocol or whatever. I'm going to be up at the school up here in the morning. And I'm going to challenge, so you, Mr. Green, you can be here or whoever, but somebody's going to prove to me that my kid was around this so-called person within 3 feet of him for 15 minutes. I'm not taking y'all's word on it because I've already been lied to by y'all. So tomorrow, somebody's gonna get to prove to me that if we're gonna go by the rules, we're gonna go by the rules. And we're gonna do it right. So tomorrow, I'm coming up here and somebody needs to explain to me and show me and prove to me that my son deserved to be quarantined, even though I know y'all don't have the right to do it anyway. Thank you.
Next up is Ms. Amber Hall.
You know, I was going to give y'all a break from having to hear from me this week until the common sense went out right out the window. I have only seen 2 people up here that's got the common sense that God gave grasshopper. And we need to take that into account. We need to start thinking for ourselves. And if y'all want to follow CDC guidelines, that's fine and dandy. But like this gentleman just said, let's follow it all the way around. Not just what is working for your agenda and what is tied to this ESSER money. Because we all know this ESSER money has strings attached. We don't know how far they go, but we know that's why these masks aren't coming off these kids. That's why we know that these test to stay programs are coming into effect. It's because of the ESSER 3 money. We're not stupid. We might not be college graduates or big master degree holders, but we know how to do the research. We know how to go to the CDC websites and look at the information just as well as you do. But I wish God would give y'all some common sense to go look it up for yourselves instead of listening to the people that are just giving you this information. You need to go look at it yourself. And since when are we going back to the 1960s where we're segregating students? We are segregating students based upon their vaccination status. That is illegal. Y'all have a nice day.
Next, we have Melissa Holland.
So I got a call this evening at 5:39 p.m. on my way here. I just listened to it a few minutes ago, thank goodness, because one of my children, which was called the incorrect name, is quarantined. Guess what he did? He went to school today. No symptoms, no nothing. So I'm not going to voluntarily keep my child at home tomorrow. So I am putting the school board and Mr. Green on notice. Tomorrow, there will be a quarantine order served to me at the school that he attends, or by a decent time, because he's allowed to go back to school this coming Thursday. So I know my rights, and I want an actual quarantine order, not a letter from the school. This needs to come from Josh Kennedy, an actual quarantine order. And by the way, I also want you to prove to me that my child was around a child, because he does wear a mask to school. All my children do. That he was around a child for more than 15 minutes, since they have assigned seating, usually at their desk or even on the floor. So please prove to me, not by a teacher and not by a school nurse, because a school nurse gets a check from Polk County school system, not by the health department. So they're not illegally allowed to quarantine. I know the law. So please have that ready at the school first thing in the morning. He will attend the school if I don't have it in hand, because you are required by the health department to hand me an actual legal quarantine order. No more voluntarily keeping our children, healthy children, at home. Please follow the CDC guidelines, because that is what North Carolina supposedly is doing. Let's use some common sense here, and let's also follow the actual North Carolina law.
That does conclude our public comment. At this point, I would be looking for a motion to move into closed session. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? For purposes of personnel and student matters. Yep. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0.